These are Stella Gara, who's a governance analyst, as well as Stephen Mwakesi, who's a public policy analyst. Thank you, lady and gent, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kenya.
Good morning. Now, the fallout from that, those remarks about the judiciary, what do you make of them? I'll start with you, Stella.
I think, Trix, one of the things that makes me extremely sad about the reaction of the president is that he betrayed his anger. Okay. It is expected that, of course, he was not going to be happy about the ruling at the High Court, but I think that speech really exposed his anger, and I wish some work had been done to ensure that even in the delivery of the statements that he made, he did not betray his anger. And the fallout is justified, if I may say. Justified because we must consistently guard the independence of the judiciary, and no arm of the government should feel like it has powers to control the other or powers to cull the other whenever they're not happy with the decisions that are made. The animosity between the executive and the judiciary has been ongoing for a while now, since the ruling after the elections.
Yes.
And this, of course, puts us in a situation where now we are watching an exchange. And one of the last actions that was taken by the former Chief Justice is to set up this panel that had the case at the High Court. And of course, the executive and the BBI proponents completely missed out on the plan that he had set up. I mean, he picked a set of judges some of whom were on the list that the president refused to approve, And basically, the team that was going to listen to this case was going to be very antagonistic to the BBI agenda and to the president's agenda. I'm not saying that the courts were not objective. All I'm saying is that we can see a lot of political intrigue in the delivery of this ruling, and unfortunately, Kenyans are the ones who are going to lose in this whole process. I wish that the president would probably stop there, and I agree with the lawyer, Counsel Dunstan, that he actually needs to relax now. I mean, every politician should be able to have a few other people who can actually be able to make the yelling that he did during the Madaraka Day celebrations.
Right.
And let the course of the law take its, rather the law take its full course. And, if we have a referendum, then so be it. If we don't, then so be it. But at least let the courts complete their assignment, and let both arms of government actually respect, the independence of each entity.
Yes, and independence is the buzzword right now. And Senior Counsel Dunstan Omari actually mentioned that issue of it being a finance issue, because there's certain infrastructural needs that the judiciary needs to put in place so that it can operate well, and therefore it depends on other arms of government for funding and, of course, the right kind of budget. But then, of course, we know that the judiciary has been starved of these funds. But is it realistic to expect that we can just limit that interdependence to just that issue of finances? I'll give this one over to you, Mr. Mwakesi.
Thank you, Trix. Good morning, Kenyans. I think the question of just limiting the question of independence to finance is one of the issues. I mean, the judiciary and CJ Maraga was quite adamant on the issue of setting up the judiciary fund and allocating it funds so that it can be able to appropriate its expenditure without necessarily having to engage with Treasury to be able to carry out its mandate. Also, of all the three arms of government, it still receives the least amount of money, considering that it is one of the key fulcrums in ensuring that justice is dispensed to Kenyans and on time. And then when you go ahead and not only limit the amount of funds available to the judiciary, but also ensure that when it comes to the issue of human resource, you create a stumbling block. And when you now have 40 judges who were anticipated to have joined the Court of Appeal to be able to ease in the burden that's there, you find that they are not being able to be empaneled and to be sworn in as judges. It creates another stumbling block and really stifles the ability or the independence of the judiciary per se. So in my view, I think there has been a systemic approach to how the judiciary has been crippled, and it's historical. I mean, sadly, President Uhuru Kenyatta cannot say he's quite innocent on the question of how far he's gone to really stifle the growth of the judiciary since the time of 2017, the decision by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And he's made those remarks quite public. I do not believe that is quite appropriate for a sitting head of state because he's been on record to have had various statements that have been acrimonious to the work of the judiciary. And then when you look at the BBI itself and the proposal of the Judiciary Ombudsman, which put the judiciary at a very difficult position in terms of viewing the proposal objectively, because they found it to be an affront to the independence of the judiciary itself. So when you look at all these paradigms tricks, you can see that indeed they would feel that the judiciary has been the baby amongst the three who has been most set aside and discarded and made to feel that they are not necessarily a significant arm of the state infrastructure.
Right, and we have had Stella saying that even just in terms of optics, the fact that he let his anger slip is not something that is becoming of a president. And here we're having a quote from Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, who said, "Threatening judges is not statesmanship and does not bring honor to the nation and dignity to the office of the president." And critics have said those remarks amount to threats to courts. Allies say it's within his rights. What do you make of how he communicated his feelings to the nation and everyone who was watching regarding to the judiciary and all that pertains to the BBI?
You know, watching that speech, it started off on a good note, and we were all believing that there was going to be brotherhood, camaraderie. He actually took notice of the CJ and saying that we pride ourselves on having the first female CJ. I would not have expected that he would go on that front.
Escalated fast.
And it escalated really fast. He coined a new frame of mind for Kenyans that you now need to be considering the burdens of choices, you know, or the burden of choice. And when he went on and got to the point of where he questioned because he would have better framed the conversation on the question of balancing the responsibilities on all arms of government. But when you decide to really pick on the judiciary on this particular day when we were marking internal self-rule, it was a big question on how we are foreseeing ourselves going forward. President Uhuru has only 13 months to go before the next election. This was his second last Madaraka Day speech.
Yes.
And to utilize it in such a manner and to speak in such a hard and harsh manner coming from a moment when Kenyans were reviving their hope in a judiciary really casts grave aspersions as to how he intends to complete his term going forward.
Right.
And for me, it didn't give Kenyans the confidence that the president has a willingness to go towards the end of his term in a peaceable manner. Justice Maraga was very clear in his mind that all his frustrations and inability to really see the judiciary grow was because of the frustrations coming from the executive. And so for CJ Koome to begin her new term under the same cloud of uncertainty and also a cloud of suspicion from the executive also gives us a very difficult understanding of what the president intends to do in the coming few days.
Right.
So for me, I wasn't quite happy with that speech. And as people have said, whoever went ahead and penned because it was very emotional, who penned those feelings into paper, also did a great disservice to His Excellency the President.
To his image. Now, Stella, so another thing that came out during that speech that I'd like, before we move on to other stories, is the fact that he was pointing that to the fact, to the perception that the judiciary is basically stomping on what the people want and the will of the people. Do you agree? Did he convince you in his speech that the judiciary is going against what the citizenry is wanting at this point politically and for the good of the nation?
From the reactions we have seen, I think one of the things that we know for a fact right now is that Kenyans are not as angry as the president presented them to be. He was definitely projecting his personal anger. There may be a section of Kenyans who are uncomfortable about parts of the ruling, but then I don't think Kenyans are angry enough to want to get back to the judiciary in the style that he has described. And I like the fact that Mwakesi has mentioned the philosophy that he was busy presenting on the burden of choice. And I think he spoke quite eloquently about it, but he did not apply it himself when he was saying the things he was saying. I wish he had actually considered what kind of impact they would have. And I say this because one of the responsibilities the president has towards the citizens is to actually show the way, not just to tell Kenyans what to do, but to show the way. In terms of social contract, the rule of law is quite a huge tenet, and in a democracy, in a functioning democracy, the rule of law must be upheld. The number one person who's supposed to be upholding this and who swears to do this is the president himself. So when he is seen to be challenging the institution that is supposed to be the adjudicator of the law, then we must all be troubled by his conduct. And this is why I keep on saying, if we have to balance this with politics, then this words should not be coming out of his mouth, because it has an impact on how the rest of the citizens appreciate the law. I mean, we saw how him ignoring rulings in court eventually led to the Minister for Interior ignoring rulings, and at some point, it was a circus, and this really must be put in check, because at the end of the day, the judiciary is an arm of the government, a critical arm of the government, and if we do not listen to them, then we go back to the wild, and it will be the survival for the fittest and the fattest.
All right. Now let's take a look at another story that is making headlines this morning, perhaps the biggest story this day as far as the print press is concerned, and that has to do with what transpired in the courts of appeal yesterday. We have Battle Royale is what the Standard is telling us. Donning elegant black gowns and white bibs, reputable legal minds appeared before the president of the appeal court at a sitting heralding 4 days of a high-stakes legal suit and political duel, only comparable in magnitude to that which annulled Kenyatta's declared victory in 2017. The same story is on the front page of the Daily Nation. We're told BBI court date jolts referendum plans, and of course this is not new, but of course very, very, very vital in terms of the top stories that are being covered this day. What do you make of this one, Mr. Mwakesi? What happened yesterday? We all saw that unfolding live on our television sets, and of course, what do you expect in the next few days?
Well, when having watched that session at the Court of Appeal, it was quite interesting that indeed the appellants were very clear in their minds that they had intent to see the ruling as was passed by the High Court set aside. What I was very happy to see was that they did not go for the idea of setting aside the actual orders from the High Court, except for the part where the IEBC put up a strong case for being allowed to be able to continue with the operations for the time period when the Court of Appeal will be considering the matters. But when I look at the mood that was there, I think a lot of Kenyans were watching with a lot of expectations to see, especially on the question of timelines. And the question of timelines was something that was hard pressing. And for the first time, the impact of not having as many judges available to listen to the case became an issue. There was a question of whether some judges should be allowed to recuse themselves or not. And these are the questions that came about. And you could see the Court of Appeal president was trying to really show that there are consequences for some of the choices that were previously made in terms of how to be able to quickly expedite the hearing of this matter. Granted as it may, the fact that the appellants were allowed 7 days and the respondents are allowed 14 days to do it, looking at the time frames, it's not so bad. And with a 4-day period to be able to hear the cases from all the parties, I think provided that they can be able to dispense with the matter as quickly as possible, then there might be some clarity going forward. Now, the question is whether that would be considered final in the grand scheme of things, because remember, there's the question of the referendum, and that's what is at the heart of everybody.
Yes.
Because what essentially happened is that the referendum was put to a stop. That's what we call the reggae. And I think when you term reggae, everybody's looking, reggae is the referendum. So the question is, are we able then to do a referendum 12 months to the general election? Remember, the general election is August 9, 2022, and anyone would say that to be able to do a referendum before that date is quite questionable, looking at the timelines that have been provided by the Court of Appeal. But there are optimists, there are people who are seated somewhere thinking that it's possible to do a referendum, it's possible even to move the date, because I've had very weird statements to that effect.
Yes.
But where it stands right now, it's a pretty hard sell to convince anyone that we can be able to have a referendum between now and the general election. And this is the reason I feel that the president had to really put up a brave face on Madaraka Day, because a lot of the people who are waiting for him in Nyanza, especially Kisumu, are waiting to hear, is it true that reggae has truly stopped?
Stopped, yeah.
And I think that whole conversation that was made during Madaraka Day was to try and give some confidence to the supporters of BBI that probably reggae was just paused for a minute. But looking at the timelines that we are seeing with the Court of Appeal, I'm not that much of an optimist unless somebody can be able to convince me that we can be able to do that in that time.
It's going to be an uphill task. Now, if you weren't aware of some of the outcomes of yesterday's proceedings, the IBC was allowed to continue doing its work with only 3 commissioners. The appeal to be heard by a bench of 7 judges, hearing to be conducted for 4 days from June 29th to July the 2nd, and then we're going to have appellate to file submissions within 7 days and respondents to file within 14 days, and each party will be given 2 hours to argue its case. Stella, what do you make of this? It's just happened. They're calling it Battle Royale.
I think there are a few things that I appreciated having seen happening in the courtroom. One of them was the fact that Katiba Institute actually went deep into requesting the court to cite the president and the former prime minister for contempt of court for speaking about this thing publicly while it was in court during the Madaraka Day celebrations.
Right.
Even as they were speaking the celebrations, I was cringing because I know that they are not supposed to be discussing such a matter,
with the line.
especially when they are parties to the case. So I'm glad that the matter was addressed. They came out of it with a slap on the back of their hands. But I imagine that this is going to be a good warning to everyone to try as much as possible to avoid the intrigues outside of the court. One of the requests that the president was making was that the court should consider the public mood while they are making their ruling. But one of the principles that the judges operate by is that they cannot be looking out here for opinions on how they should rule in court. It's supposed to be an independent ruling, and for this reason, I'm actually happy that that has been cleared from the beginning. I have also noticed that there are a lot of games being played with time, and I think Makesi has already addressed part of it.
Right.
You will notice that the appellant wants this case to be rushed so that they can be able to finish and get a referendum before the coming election. And notice how, their opponents demanded even for more time. I mean, they wanted, to have sufficient time to be able to address their issues. It was also surprising that the AG's representative, Councillor Raro, was saying he would need 3 hours to argue his case, and they tried to defend a position for 2 hours and all.
Yes.
And for me, I see this game of time being partly that they want this case to be completed quickly, but also a game to ensure that this case is dragged as long as possible, so that the determination actually affects the quality or even the existence of a referendum. I think IBC is going to be a huge casualty in this situation, and I sympathize with them. We consistently put them in a situation where they have to work so hard before every election. And this year again, we are now going to force them to start working on a referendum very late in the year, and then coming next year, they'll have so much to chase for the coming election. So I for their sake, I actually wish that the ruling would be done quickly so that they can be able to take action, especially now that they've been allowed to continue, even though they're not fully constituted. It basically means those commissioners have, probably double work to do, even though they have all the technical support they would need from their teams in the Secretariat.
Okay, now let's shift gears to the situation in the country, the health situation in the country. On page 4 of the Standard this morning, we are told that Kisumu, Kericho and Kisii are leading now in COVID cases. The rise on infections blamed on laxity in testing, low vaccine uptake and relaxed restrictions and massive movement of locals, even as the threat of a fourth wave looms. When you look at all these things that are being blamed on these being the epicenters of infections in other parts of the other regions of the country, they all seem like things that can be avoided or hastened. For example, vaccination. What do you make of this, and do you think all is being done, or has the focus just been on Nairobi to the point that this is now spreading elsewhere without us knowing? Mr. Mwakesi.
Trix, thank you for that question. The question of how we are really handling the COVID-19 pandemic going forward is quite something to be really carefully analyzed. The fact that, of course, there's some little bit of the second doses which are purportedly coming in, but we've not really focused on the issue of vaccination as a country. When you look at the budget proposals and even the amount set aside for the vaccination program, we cannot even be able to do more than 30% of the country in terms of vaccination. So I still don't believe we've really put our heart and mind into going about preventing any further surge in numbers, and especially when you see that it had already been predicted between now and July there might be another strong wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time as we are saying this, there has been a lot of relaxation in terms of how we are ensuring that we are keeping to the COVID measures correctly. Let's not close our eyes to the fact that this Madaraka Day and just the scenes that were seen in those areas heading to the stadium was quite a clear indication that if there was a super spreader event of recent times, that was one of them.
Right.
And then there has been a lot of other underground activity going on in the country that does not inspire confidence that we are really taking this matter seriously. But as you've rightly said, the question that we should be really focused on right now is how much attention are we giving to vaccination. We're not giving a lot of attention to that, and it's going to cost us in the end. We're also not making sure that our health centers are completely taken care of as we're going, because if we are preparing for another wave, then we should have seen a lot more investment in hospital infrastructure. The last wave really exposed how badly we were in terms of oxygen provision for the country. I do not believe that a significant effort has been made to ensure that we do not encounter such a scenario once again. And in some of these areas that we have been mentioned with surging numbers, the infrastructure is still very wanting in terms of even provision of oxygen in those areas. So I still believe a lot more needs to be done, and government needs to stop just talking. And I know this is a lull period, especially when it comes to government expenditure, the period between now and the end of the financial year in June 30th. But again, government must be a little bit more proactive, because between now and then, if we are not coming up with very close measures to try and contain this spread, we will end up in a bad situation.
Absolutely. And with those situations that have been highlighted in that particular article, now I'll couple it for you, Stella, with this opinion piece on page 15 of the Standard by Akesi Wandera. It says Madaraka Day ceremony was unnecessary, and she says if we cannot learn from countries like Italy that experience the ruthlessness of the virus firsthand, then we will continue to experience a never-ending cycle cycle that will be detrimental to all of us in all aspects. And picture there, right, of course, all the Uhuru Kenyatta's, the president's supporters, cheering, milled around his vehicle, the motorcade, but of course not adhering to social distancing and all the rules that are required. What do you make of that? And perhaps aren't we as serious as we should be?
I think, Trix, let me just begin on a light note. I saw a cartoon that said that the people who are gathered at the gate of the stadium, wanting to enter the stadium, said that Baba had already suffered from COVID on their behalf. And,
so they are good.
He managed it, so they are good. But on a more serious note, I think we need to be a little bit more serious about how we are managing COVID-19. And indeed, there has been a lot of relaxation, especially after the last time the president opened the country. I don't know whether it was because of the way he opened the country or the mood around the country when he opened it, because many people are putting a lot of pressure on him to allow the country to open. But it seems people have thrown caution into the air and they have decided they're going to continue living their lives. Of course, this is a trend that had been predicted as part of human behavior, that after they have managed the fear and they have figured out how to operate within the environment, they would now stop taking precaution. It's unfortunate that we still have the size of gathering that we had for the Madaraka Day celebration, when we have already found systems and ways through which we could actually be able to have held